Just going on now, Trevor. This is actually easier than messaging you.
Okay, so we're good to go?
Not quite. It takes a second for him to do his part to get it through to our website. I like the new meeting information to say that it's live streamed, and by staying, you're agreeing to it. It's a good addition.
It's better than the annoying one that used to pop up that says, Lori and I were just talking about that. It is now being recorded that you had to actually click off.
I still have that on mine. Maybe I haven't updated.
Oh, there's an update. Yeah, when you leave, you'll probably get a message that there's an update. Update it.
Okay.
If we're good to go now.
I think we are. Thank you. I'll get Councillor Buderick to come on screen. Thank you. And with that, it is now 6:35, so I will call the Committee of the Whole to order for this Tuesday, August the 3rd. And we have no closed session this evening. So first up is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
Fine.
Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. Take Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Buderick. All right, any comment? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Oh, and for the record, I should make the statement that we've had regrets from Councillors Porter, Councillor Townend, and Councillor Parks for this evening. But we do have quorum with the four of us here, so we shall continue. I asked for a disclosure of pecuniary interest. I don't think there was any. And no closed session, so we'll move to staff reports. First up, 5.1 is the land acknowledgement. We have a report before us, and I believe this is the clerk's, or are we going to Ms. Fennell or the director? Who's calling this way?
I just wanted to Hillary's actually going to do a presentation for us, but I think this is the first meeting that our new Heritage Culture and Tourism Manager has attended. So I just wanted to take a second to introduce you to Lindsay T, who has been working with Hillary in our new division, and I happen to call them the dynamic duo. So they are two fantastically talented women. I'll say that. And with that, Hillary, take it away, and Lindsay and I are here if you have other questions as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome, Lindsay, and I'll open the floor to Hillary, but I do have a quick question for Lori before we go. If they're the dynamic duo, which one's Batman and which one's Robin?
I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, go ahead, Hillary, thank you.
Thank you. Just going to share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Seeing nods? Think so, yep.
Great. So thank you and good evening. As council is aware, township staff has spent the last number of months diligently working with Candace Lloyd of NOCUM Learning, as well as a quite vast group of constituents and surrounding residents of other regions as part of the Indigenous community. We've been working with these folks to create a very genuine and authentic land acknowledgement, which sets Loyalist Township apart from many other municipalities because of the amount of work and intention that was put into this project. So we are all very proud, and the members of the Sharing Circle are very proud of what we've been able to draft. The recommendation for council this evening is, in order to continue to share the land acknowledgement, to adapt the procedural bylaw and amend it to include the reading of the shortened version of the land acknowledgement at the beginning of each regular council session. This is the shortened version. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Omami-Wanini peoples. We acknowledge and welcome the presence of all Indigenous peoples, including the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across this vast land who also makes this place home. The lands we are on today are recognized in the 2-0 Wampum, Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 27, and the Crawford Purchase. I just want to acknowledge here there has been a great deal of conversation about use of certain words and grammatical language, and that was a very large part of the creation of this land acknowledgement. In particular, for our own way of speaking, we questioned about the use of makes versus make this place home. So we did send that back to Candace Lloyd, who took it back to the sharing circle. As well, she did consult with a member of the Queen's team, who's an expert in that field. And the reason for choosing the word makes is it's about a sense of ownership. It makes it present. It's a deliberate syntax, and it's part of what makes Loyalist Township. So that is the reason for the language, and we did have a lot of dialogue on that. So I just wanted to assist that, and that will also be something we share with the community as part of our educational piece as well. And of course, the rationale for this adaptation is it is the first of many steps in creating a relationship with the Indigenous community. We're very proud of that, but it's the first of many. It, of course, supports the township's vision statement to enhance our sense of community identity. And as well, Loyalist Township does have a responsibility to follow the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada in doing so. And that is all for me.
Thank you very much, Hillary. I'll turn to the members of council. Again, this is committee of the whole, so it is more conversational in approach. If you have comments or questions with regard to the land acknowledgement, long or short, please feel free to express them. Members, comments? Seeing none, I'll start it off. I do have a great appreciation for the work that's been done by the entire department and led by Hillary for this particular segment. And I greatly appreciate the work that's been done. And please pass on our appreciation to the sharing circle and the group that you worked with to aid in the development. I too had the same question about the word makes, and I appreciate the explanation, and I'm okay with it, with that explanation. So, other comments from members of council? And I'll go to the deputy.
I have a question on ongoing support, not necessarily the statements themselves. When we had the session, the training session, it was indicated that there would be ongoing assistance for the ones of us that will have to be using these to make sure that we do it properly, and that we even just the pronunciations. In the report, it mentioned that we are nearing the end of our contract with that company. Will that be on? Will there be somebody available to continue that on, the training?
Go to Hillary, or
I can speak to that if you wish. Yes, the township has established a fantastic relationship with Candace, and that will be ongoing. I spoke with her earlier this evening on the phone. We're cell phone buddies. She is available. She also understands, which is part of what made the relationship so successful from the beginning, that this can be a little bit intimidating. The language in itself can be intimidating. It's not familiar to many of us. She worked diligently with a number of our staff already to try to coach us through, and she's available ongoing for individual or group sessions.
thank you. And I would note that she worked specifically with me in having to record the messages. And in fact, as Trevor will note, I still managed to screw it up, and we're having to do another recording fairly soon. But it is difficult language. It is not necessarily comfortable to the tongue, but it can be learned, and once you get it, it starts to become fairly easy. Any other questions or comments from the remainder of council? Seeing none. Okay, we do have a recommendation within the report. Okay. Do I have a mover for that? I'll go to the deputy mayor. So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Buderick, thank you. Any other comments on this particular segment? I'll go to the deputy.
I too would just like to reiterate what the mayor has said, that a great deal of work has gone into this. During that training session, you began to realize just how much work has gone into this and how much thought went into it to make sure that everyone was fully educated, and being able to do a really, what I see as a meaningful statement. And so that was my biggest concern right from the start, is if we're going to do this, then it has to be meaningful and it has to be done correctly. And I provided comments on the drafts and everything, and I believe they were taken into consideration from what I can see, the discussions we've had and the final statements. And so I just wanted to commend staff and the mayor as well. I know he worked on it as well with staff, but I think we've done an excellent job. I've still got a lot more to learn, hence my original question. But I believe that we've done an excellent job on this, and I believe staff, they excelled at it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments? No? And then I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, and thank you to staff for that explanation. We move to item 5.2, which is the procedural bylaw amendment, section 11.1, and I believe we have a PowerPoint presentation from the clerk.
That you do. It was hard to create a report on this because a lot of it is just generating discussion points, and part of it was in recognition of 5.1, the land acknowledgement. So I'll just share my screen. I can get the slideshow going. Beginning.
Not yet.
How
There we
about now? All right. So the procedure bylaw amendments, these are proposed changes that we'll go through. And okay, it's going to make me do this. This is the from the current bylaw, the current consolidated bylaw. So what we've done, and we'll be sending this out to council members and staff, as well as putting it on our website, but as a consolidated version of the procedure bylaw. The reason for this is the more amendments that we put to it, it's having to go back and look and see what was done. So we've incorporated into the consolidated version. So, and what happens is the bylaw where it's amending bylaw is listed in the bylaw so that there is reference of why it's been changed. So this is the section that we will be looking at right tonight. So it's section 11.1, which is the agenda timing and composition. On the left side is the existing, and on the right is the proposed, and the yellow highlights the sections that we're asking for consideration to change. So the existing, there was a call to order the national anthem closed session. I'll go down that way. The proposed is just to change the order in that, because closed session typically happens at the very beginning, is to highlight that and identify that typically on a night when there is a closed session, that council will call the meeting to order earlier on at 6 o'clock or whatever time the closed session would be, go into closed session and then come back and then start the regular meeting at the scheduled time of 7. And then we would move into the national anthem. And then add the land acknowledgement following the earlier discussion. So those would be added into this section. I'm not sure, Your Worship, if you wanted like just general discussions as we go from each page.
I think that's an excellent idea. To the members of council, do you have any questions or comments about this section or this page as it's proposed? I do believe you've got an example of the national anthem for us.
Yes, actually, there's a slide in here, but I'm going to leave it because Trevor's incorporated into the training or into the demo. So you'll be able to see that, I believe, at that time or separately on the demonstration on that.
Okay, Council, you okay with that? I'm seeing nods. Any other questions with regard to this section? I'm seeing shaking heads. We can move forward. Thank you.
Section 11.1N, the proposal is to add committee minutes for information. So as we didn't really have a set section in the procedure bylaw where minutes could go from minutes for information could go on the agenda. So the idea on this would be any minutes from any of the committees that council are members on, they could be added in here under the consent portion of the agenda with the understanding that if there was action that was expected from the minutes, that would be coming through a separate report for action that would be handled through the department where that would be highlighted. So say it was recreation, it would be coming through the CCS department, or heritage would be economic growth and community development, that type of thing.
Just for clarification, the minutes, the committee minutes that you're referring to would be potentially, obviously, our internal committees, if you will, the heritage, the ferry committee, there's a number of them. Would it also include minutes from, I'll say, quasi-external, the CRCA, the Economic Development Coalition, things of that nature? Would those be available for inclusion in this?
Anything that's sent to us, we can include on that. It's not something that we typically go out and look for, but if we can reach out to any of those, especially if council wants to see certain ones, let us know and we can reach out and get onto their mailing list, and then we could add those into our into this section.
Okay. Council, any questions or comments with regard to this addition? I'll go to the deputy. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, make sure I understand this correctly. So any committee minutes would be in the consent section unless there's an action item. So would the minutes then be approved as part of the report with the action? I'm assuming they would be, and not the minutes in one place and the action items in another.
So the minutes are usually provided to council for information because again, it depends on the timing of when the minutes are done. There's an X section that may speak to a bit on that, Deputy Mayor, but the idea is that when minutes are prepared from committees, that they could be there so that there's one area to look at on the agenda for minutes. But yes, they would be information minutes. As I said, anything that would be an action coming from a set of minutes, the action would generate a report to present to council what the action is that's being requested and recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, I'll wait and see the next section that you referred to.
Okay. Anybody else have comments or questions about this? Again, it's committee of the whole. Throw them out if you got them. And I'll ask the clerk to keep moving. Oh, hang on. Councillor Buderick, go ahead.
Just one comment more than anything. I'm really happy that we're actually finally doing this because, for example, on an external committee that I'm part of, the Taxing Commission, I do keep you abreast of things the odd time, as well as the CAO when it matters. But it's almost like I've been on an island with this committee and nobody really knows what's going on. So I think this is a great idea.
And I think in the next section, you'll see another part that will help that as well. And so thank you. Anything else? Okay, Ms. Chapman, we'll keep moving.
So this was where the national anthem was, but when I tested this at SMT this morning, my link didn't work. So I'm gonna leave that for Trevor later.
Okay, Councilor, you're okay with that? Okay, good.
Technology. So again, another proposal for under section 11.1 under the existing is under after new business would be to add updates from members appointed to county council committees and local boards. So this would be an area that would allow, again, the members, the mayor and deputy mayor who sit on county council to be able to present things from, you know, that happened at county council, or as Councillor Buderick mentioned, like from the taxi commission. So sometimes the minutes are, again, depending on whether they're sent before whether they're draft or whether they're approved or waiting for approval. So it's a timing thing. So sometimes you may not get a copy of those minutes till, you know, after the meeting or the you know, the discussion on it. So this section here would allow members to be able to present those in a timely fashion to provide an update to the remaining members of council.
Thank
And
you.
staff and the public.
And I'll add to that, this is actually, I'll say, drawn from the example of our county council, where we do have this opportunity to speak to the current issue, and in some cases speak, I'll say, more descriptively than the minutes can show, and allow that verbal report to the remainder of council, especially when there's a need for council's engagement in some of those activities. So I think it's an excellent inclusion.
The other thing that I would add there, Your Worship, is if members, when they're attending meetings and that, and they write notes or, you know, do a summary for themselves, if they want to forward that to us, we can include that as well for them to, you know, for them to speak on. We take written just as well as verbal as well. So that's just if it is.
Okay, council, any other questions there? Seeing none. Oh,
And then
Deputy,
the last part on this is just to flip the upcoming meeting dates and the adjournment. The idea when we flipped it the last time was the upcoming meeting dates was more just as a, you know, as an information kind of a notice type of thing of upcoming meetings. However, what we are finding is when there are dates that need to be discussed and those types of things, that we do add it in there. So it should be before the adjournment, and the adjournment should be the adjournment. So we're just, the suggestion is to flip those back again to have the adjournment as the last thing.
Understood. Thank you. I did see the deputy mayor's hand.
Yes, thank you. My first comment is I like you, Mr. Mayor, I do like to see this provide this opportunity on the updates from the members that are on committees and everything. Like you've already said, at county council, sometimes that's when we get the most pertinent, up-to-date information directly from members of committees. That in some of the cases with county council, the meeting might have been that day, and we get the update, you know, that evening. And so it's very current, and depending on what it is, it's you know, is of importance to us to bring back to our constituents as well. So I'm really glad to see that. Now, I still do just have one other question, going back to the previous slide. Then, if this was the one that was meant to help clarify, I still do just have one question.
Okay.
And I guess this goes back from when I first went on to council. I was of the understanding that when we accept minutes of a committee, we accept any actions or anything that's noted in those minutes are being accepted and approved by council. But from what you're saying is we accept the minutes strictly as information, and then action items would be outside of that?
Yes, it's very similar to your committee of the whole meetings, not that the committee of the whole would be part of that. The committee of the whole is still up under minutes because the actions are taken out of that, so that you know what it is you're discussing or requiring additional information on and approving. at council. So again, the committee of the whole is making recommendations to council, just the same as committees are making recommendations to council. So if there's any recommendations in there that potentially moves the township forward, it would be generally done through a report to say, you know, here's the actions that the committee are wanting council to discuss and approve. So that would go back to them to say, you know what, they've received it, understood it, and supported what it is that they're asking. Again, it depends. It's so hard to take a circumstance right now as an example, but that would be the intent of a committee meeting. The minutes.
Okay. And I'm just, okay, so the report would be in the agenda dealt with previous to receiving the minutes.
Maybe, yes. So through your worship, so one of the examples I guess that I could give is your vibrancy committee. The vibrancy committee minutes are there because that the minutes capture what's discussed at the meeting. If there's action to be taken from that again is a recommendation to council that came through a report to say this was discussed in the meeting of XYZ date, and these are the actions or the direction that the committee is asking council to make provide additional information.
Okay. And that, okay, I think I understand it better now because I keep going back to that first lesson that I learned coming on council is when you receive them, you're receiving and approving. And that's why I always, pick stuff out of the committee, any committee meetings minutes that I'm unsure of to see if it's, make sure that it, and I guess that's the other thing is there's still that opportunity to do it in the consent because the members of the committee or the staff member that presents the minutes, they may see it as a housekeeping or a routine item where when it comes to council without our full background on it, we may see it as an action item when in reality it may not be. So we can still speak to it and separate it and have a discussion at that time.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other members of council, are we clear on the intent for that? I think so. I'm seeing nods. Do we have any other comments or questions with regard to this slide? Okay, and it brings us to adjournment not in this meeting, but in the report.
Oh, sorry, yes. That was just questions, suggestions, or any additional considerations. I did scan again, typically we probably wouldn't have introduced these proposals, but with the land acknowledgement, we needed to look at an amendment anyway. So it just gave the opportunity to have a quick scan of it to say whether there was any small housekeeping that could be added to the amendment that would be put before council, well, put before the public and then before council for consideration. So I would just open it up that if there was anything else anybody wanted to discuss under the procedure bylaw.
Anything from anyone? Questions, comments, ideas? Anybody have any problem with the way our agendas flow? That's basically what we're working on. And I'm seeing none.
Okay. And then, so the last one, I'm just going to kind of give an overview and then I'm going to hand it over to Trevor. With the hybrid meetings, the council chambers is being prepared to transition back to in-person meetings. The first phase is to transition to a hybrid model that will have members of council and select staff returning to the council chambers. The hybrid meetings will continue to be held via Zoom to allow for members of council, staff, and the public to virtually attend the meetings still. As well as it will be live streamed and available through our YouTube channel, so similar to what it is being done now. I know the mayor and I were just chatting before the committee of adjustment in regards to, the intent was always to move to live streaming the meetings, but with the pandemic, it just moved everything up that much quicker to get it in. And I think with the attendance virtually open to more residents, I think it's been well received. And it does get the information out there more so than even, I think, a lot of what the in-person meetings did. So during the transition, it will be necessary or as much as possible to know in advance who's planning to be in the meeting and who's not, just so that, and you'll see it when it comes up on the demo, just so that we can look at the optics when we go to the live streaming on that. And I will stop sharing my side and I will, pass it. Got to end this one here. And then I will pass it over to Trevor to give a little demo of our hybrid meeting.
Hi, Trevor.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Debbie. So we've been working with iCompass just in the process of setting up the hybrid meetings. As you're aware, we began working with iCompass before the pandemic to initiate the live streaming process in council chambers. And at that time, we had a hardware encoder so that way we could broadcast from a camera inside chambers. At this time, through the hybrid model, we're going to be using a software encoder, just as a bit of background. So through that software encoder, we can layer multiple sources of multimedia. So that could be in the form of a video coming from our camera inside the chambers, as well as a capture of our Zoom meeting, as you see it here on your screen in front of you. We can also layer things like audio sources as well, or images. So as was mentioned in the last portion was the national anthem. So we can layer the national anthem audio over top of our meeting source and then cut to the live feed as well. So it does give us some flexibility in terms of what we can do. For the council and staff that are attending in person, they can follow the meeting agenda on their device in front of them as they would normally when they're in chambers. While the Zoom meeting will be visible on the TV monitor in front of council as well. So this is how we set it up and tested it. Obviously, we're here today. We have adjustments still to make and audio levels to change and camera positions to adjust, but looking for your feedback on how you think this might work. So if it's all right, I'll go ahead and share my screen now.
Please do so.
All right. So I have two separate videos here. We just recorded the hybrid council test, and then we recorded the national anthem test separately. So I'll just play the hybrid council test here. So as you can see, Deputy Clerk Megan was also here and she participated. So just to kind of give you a sense of how it works with the Zoom and then also with the camera. And as I mentioned earlier, we did work with iCompass. So they identified a number of municipalities that have done hybrid meetings successfully. So this was the one model that we thought worked really well, was having the Zoom layer over top, and the way our chambers is positioned, we do have that space below. So that's how we set it up. But as I say, we're looking for your feedback. So I'll go ahead and start to play.
Trevor, are we supposed to be hearing something?
Yeah, not picking up the audio.
I'm not getting audio. The rest of council? No, we're not getting the audio.
Okay. Just going to try this again.
The images on the screen didn't appear to be moving either.
No?
Or very little anyway.
Yeah, they weren't a very robust
No.
meeting group. Just while Trevor's working with that, as I was saying earlier, the meetings via Zoom are quite easy to put together and to host and to go through. The more we get into, and especially moving to hybrid, it does take a little bit more resources to have that going. Oops, I'll leave Trevor go here.
Okay, so hopefully this will work this time. So start in a few seconds here. Okay, so today we are in council chambers. It's August 3rd, and we're going to be testing a hybrid council meeting with some participants participating via Zoom and some participants here present in council chambers. We currently have a Zoom meeting set up, and Megan is participating along with myself. We also have the camera positioned here live in council chambers, and we also have the Zoom meeting being displayed on the television screen here in council chambers, so anyone present here in person can view the participants on the screen in front of them along with the agenda on their iPads. So maybe I'll just ask Megan just to say a few words just to test her audio.
Good afternoon. Oh, it's not working. Good afternoon, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, Megan. And the other piece that we just wanted to demo and test today was the national anthem. So we have an instrumental version which we're just going to test so council can hear what it's going to sound like before each council meeting and get their feedback. So we'll just go ahead and we can play that. So I'm just going to switch videos now. And maybe I'll just stop the video there.
Okay.
All right.
And now, questions and comments with regard to presentation. Oh, sorry, Trevor, were you completed?
Yeah. Happy to answer any questions though.
And
Sorry, just through your worship.
Go
So
ahead.
the addition will be, there will be looking at plexiglass going between council members, so that council members would be sitting up at the dais, so that come in with masks on, sit, and when sitting, we still have to put this in and then run it past the public health. But the intent is that they'd be able to come in as soon as they're sitting down, they'd be able to remove their mask, because there would be the plexiglass in between members for safety purposes. As Trevor had mentioned, there will be a TV at the front, kind of looking down, that will allow council members in chambers to follow the meeting as it's going. And the other thing which council had put in their amendment to the bylaw was procedure bylaw, sorry, was to allow for the electronic voting, which is available through iCompass. So we will be setting up a training session on that as well. So that will make chairing a little easier in regards to having to look at both in-person and virtual people when the vote is taken. So the intent on that is, once the motion is recommendation is moved and seconded, we push it out to members of council. They vote on screen, and then it comes back with whether it's carried or lost. So again, this is a work in progress as we move along. The idea is that we'd be looking at a meeting in September to try it. I'm sure there will probably be a few growing pains as we go through it, but at least we'll be moving hopefully forward to looking at having people back in the council chambers.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll turn to council first for questions or comments or ideas on how that hybrid virtual environment works, or comments about the O Canada version, or comments about the electronic voting. Anybody? I'll go to the deputy.
Thank you. Of course, I've got a question. So when we're setting up the hybrid meetings, do I understand that the intent is that it will be available for every council member to attend in person? But if they don't, then they would notify staff to be able to get a Zoom link. And for whatever reason, if they were not feeling 100% or something like that, they would be able to come in on Zoom instead of being in person. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is the intent wasn't that sort of half would be in the council chambers and half wouldn't, and it'd be a rotation or something. The intent is there would be some place available for everyone to be in the chambers.
Through your worship, those are great questions, and we love your questions, Deputy Mayor. On those, part of that will be dependent on public health, so we still have to get this all through them. The intent was that if members of council want to come back in, that we're hoping the room would be able to hold that, but with the understanding as well that there is the availability of still doing Zoom. So that was kind of the intent, to show you what it looks like. So it would be, I guess the reason that we would ask is if people were coming in, it helps us with numbers, and it helps us with being able to maybe arrange a little bit different. As you can see, the pan out, the more people that are there, the camera has to be back a bit, so it does make for a little further. So that would just help us, because then we could look at how that would look for the public. Not sure whether I answered all your questions on that one.
Yes, you did. That's good. I look forward to trying it back in chambers for sure. One other question I had, and it's to do with the voting, electronic voting. So in reality, every vote would basically be a recorded vote then, because it would electronically be recorded.
There's a couple of different ways that can happen in regards to the voting. I believe the option is there that it would just be a total, or the option is there, I believe, that again on the part that it would show. So similar to the attendance. It would be able to show that if somebody was wanting to know how a member voted on an item, that they would be able to see that. So that would be a further discussion down the road. Like once we got that in and had the training session on it, there might be tweaks that could be done on that in regards to the voting.
Okay, thank you. I realize that's a work in progress right now, so maybe those answers will come as it's more final, it gets closer to being finalized. But I was just trying to make sure I was staying up on current on the information. And as far as the national anthem, I kind of like that version of it. It's clean, it's crisp. I kind of like just the instrumental. It's just a nice, I was going to say generic. That's the wrong term, but it is. It's not, and so I like that version. Thank you.
Great, simple and dignified. Yeah. Other questions about the hybrid or any of these pieces? I've got a few if you don't. Okay. One of the questions I've had, and I've had since the beginning of the pandemic when we first went to Zoom and we tried to do it from chambers. At the time, myself, Madam Clerk, and the CAO were present in the chambers, and we had a horrible time with what I would call the echo or the reverb effect of having multiple microphones and multiple speakers in the same room. I couldn't really tell if that was still impacting on the sample that you were just doing. It didn't sound like it was too much, but I'll ask Trevor and Debbie for their comments on that side of it.
That was probably one of our biggest fears in regards to and looking at how that was going to happen, because the feedback it made it very difficult if we were in the chamber. So the idea with this, and Trevor can speak more on it, but the idea with this is that when in council chambers, you're not on Zoom. Because Zoom platform was meant for people to be off-site, attending the meeting and not in the same room on the part. Video, it wasn't that bad, but audio, it definitely was having trouble. But the intent with the live streaming from in council chambers is that goes through the camera that's set up and the audio that's set up through Trevor versus through Zoom.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Trevor, is there more on that? I think that was kind of.
Yeah, no, I think that pretty much sums it up. We did test, we've done a few tests of the hybrid scenarios too, and we've had to play around with the audio levels from the different sources to try to find what works. So I think we've refined it a little bit, and we can probably, I think I said earlier, we can refine it a little bit more, probably to improve it a little bit yet.
Following that, my next idea is around the presentations from staff, if there's delegations or open forum speakers. I'm assuming either the clerk or yourself, Trevor, will be, I'll say, managing the Zoom environment and can switch it to the focus on speaker as opposed to the gallery. I don't know how the rest of you are looking at this right now, but I can see all the boxes at the moment. Yes. Where if you set it on speaker, as I think that's the right term, who's ever talking has the full screen effect. And I find that if a staff member is making a presentation or a delegation, if we don't do that, then they'll be lost as one of the little squares when there's 25 people in the room. And it may be difficult to see or understand what that person is presenting. Can who's ever managing the Zoom environment that is broadcast into the chambers, would that be a reasonable approach to it?
Good point. I don't know that we really thought of that part of it on just the individual. We are, that will take down as a comment to make sure. So I think the intent would be that because the Zoom links are set up and we don't want to change them right now because everybody is familiar with them until we make a further change down the road if we have to. So we'd continue with Zoom, but we'll make sure that on that end of it, that it would be individual speaker. The thing is on the public view, they don't see all the behind the scenes. So only those who are panelists, so such as all of council, would be able to see who's in as participants or who's in attending, and the screen as it is. So typically the video would be turned off. So anybody who's speaking, it may not be quite as hard to see who would be speaking, but it's a good point, and we'll take that into consideration when we're setting up.
Okay, thank you. And my other thought was with regard to the idea of electronic voting. My kind of assumption, and again, this is all new, this is all, I'll call it experimental at this point, would be that even if the members of council are voting electronically, the result, if you will, would be, unless it's a called for, lost the words, unless it's a recorded vote that's called for, then it would simply show up as carried or declined, period. And that's the way it would show in the minutes. Again, unless a member of council asks for it to be otherwise, while if you rewatch the video, you'd be able to pick that out. But beyond that, the official record would simply say carried. I don't know, maybe again, if at council's discretion, we could have it say carried 5-2 or carried 4-3 or however, if we want that. But my thought anyway, and again, this is open for discussion and council's decision, but my thought would be that it would simply continue to say carried or denied, unless it was called for as a recorded vote.
Yeah, and your worship on that as well. Like, I know there's times when there may be issues once it gets pushed out. So on some of those, it may not show somebody voting. Like if they, I don't know, had an issue with their iPad at that time, it froze or something like that. The other is that we're able to enter it manually. So all we would have to do, because we'd be able to see it from our end, who's all voted, we'd be able to say Deputy Mayor, it seems like you're having trouble. How do you vote? And then we would enter it in for them, and then it shows. But that will be, yeah, we'll set up a training session. So it would probably be a committee of the whole training session that would just be for or even individually to show members of council how that would be, and then there could be discussion on what you want to see as an end result of those votes.
Thank you. And I would also add that I think it needs to be, I'll say, pretty much rock solid when we go live with it. We don't want, I'll say, long-term questions about the legitimacy of the voting process, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Discussion? What do you think, guys? I'll go to the deputy.
I just have one follow-up question. And I'm sure that it's already been addressed, but it's been touched on kind of twice here. The volume of the recordings. And I'm going back to the last meeting we had before we went virtual and everything. And we weren't set up for a virtual meeting. And the big comments that I saw online where they couldn't hear it. They couldn't hear anything. So I'm assuming that we're tying right in with the sound system or something in the chambers so that when someone is making a comment, as long as their mic is on or whatever, the feed will be good and clear for the public that are listening or watching a recording afterwards.
Through your worship, those will be definitely areas that we will be testing and double testing to make sure we're able to. I know, even as you said, in council chambers, sometimes the system didn't always work to what we wanted as. I know I know we have budgeted funds to do some additional upgrades in the council chambers. Got put on hold when everything got shut down. So we haven't moved forward with updating or making any updates in the council chambers. So that's something, again, moving forward with the hybrid, thinking long-term, that we would be looking at to ensure that that's available.
Excellent. Okay. Right. I've got one more comment, and it's kind of a general comment. 18 months ago, or whenever that date was, we as council, and more specifically our staff, got thrown into let's go virtual right now. And I have to give tremendous kudos to the clerk, to all of the staff. I know, Trevor, you've been involved with it as well, and everybody that's been involved with it. You've become rocket scientists on this, and we greatly appreciate the fact that if it wasn't for the work that you've done to keep and keep on improving this Zoom environment, we wouldn't still be having council meetings. So we greatly appreciate all the work you've done, how fast you were able to move to get to where we are. and recognize that we still need to move further, and we appreciate the example that was brought forward today. You guys have done a tremendous job, so thank you on that.
Thank you.
Other members of council? I'm seeing nothing. We do have, I guess, we don't have a formal recommendation here. And would you like a motion to receive this for information and direction?
Yeah, just if the general is to move forward with these amendments, we'll draft the amending bylaw and bring that forward with a public meeting. So we could probably give notice at the August 9th meeting that the bylaw would be on the first meeting in September. I think that will give us enough time to let them know. Again, I think I stress that at this point, it's just the council meetings in September that we're looking at. The idea would be to look at committees, but some of them, especially planning or committee of adjustment, there's a notice period. So we just need to make sure, A, that it's going to work, and then B, that when notices go out, that we've given enough time to provide those notices. So the intent right now is that it would be council meetings.
Okay. Thank you. And actually, a follow-up question. I believe I understand this process, but I want your clarity on this. Right now, we are still under the declaration of emergency, and we have made changes to our procedural bylaw to allow us to continue using the virtual, basically as needed, beyond the declaration of emergency.
Yes.
Is that at the call of the chair, or is that at a council decision, or is it as we go?
I believe it's in the bylaw. I will double check on that, but I believe it was set up in the bylaw that it was. So prior to the pandemic, there was a section that allowed someone to remotely or call in basically to attend the meeting. With the emergency, it was then set up to do electronic virtual meetings. Then there was the amendments which allowed the bylaws to have further change to say that this, I think they, again, were similar to us, that they found that this was a good thing out of maybe the whole pandemic, was the more open and transparency that municipal councils were able to, townships were able to do with their meetings. So they did allow it further. So I'll double check that, Your Worship, but I'm pretty sure we're set with our procedure bylaw to allow us to continue virtual meetings.
Okay. It's just, my thought is that I'm kind of assuming that at some point over the next, I'll just say little while, that the emergency declaration will likely be dropped. I wanted to make sure that we are still procedurally valid to continue with virtual and to move to the hybrid when we see fit.
I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure we're good.
Thank you. Again, does council have any questions about that side of things? And, you know, I'm kind of assuming September, October, we might have the opportunity to be back in chambers. I would hope. Anything else? And can I get a motion to receive and direct? I'll take Councillor Buderick, seconded by the deputy. Any further comments? No, deputy?
I was going to just, I'm shocked that I actually made that motion, because if it had been televised or recorded when I ran for council the very first time, I probably wouldn't have run, because there's absolutely no way I wanted my face on the internet or in the newspaper or anything else. And yet here I am making the motion. So kudos to staff for walking this old geezer through the system and making me as comfortable as I am.
Absolutely. And you look good on TV. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Is there anything else for the good of the committee of the whole? I'm seeing none. Okay. And again, we'll thank staff and look to a motion to adjourn. Councillor Buderick, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Any comment? Call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is carried. We are adjourned. Have a great night, folks. Thank you very much to everyone. everyone in attendance and in the audience.